welcome back. Now today I'm going to be changing the camshaft position sensor in this 04 Grand Am. Now this one is under the power steering pump. That is the camshaft position, not the crankshaft position sensor. Now the reasons to change that is, one, on this 197,000 miles, it's about time for a change. So some of the problems with a bad camshaft position sensor would be stalling, ignition problems, poor fuel economy, slow, sluggish acceleration, engine stalling, stuff like that. So since this is approaching 200,000 miles, and it kind of does have some of these issues, and it may not be exactly this sensor, but at 200,000 miles it's probably the original sensor. So let's take it out, change it, and show you how to do it. Now the crankshaft position sensor has one bolt holding it, but the catch is getting to it. It is down here under the power steering pump. If you can see the bolt and the plug-in right there, that's where it is. So now what we're going to have to do is remove the power steering pump in order to get to it. So now, before I get started, I have a jack under there, under the oil pan of the car, to support the engine once I undo the mount. Now, make sure you have a piece of wood. That way you don't damage the oil pan between the oil pan and the jack. In order to hold that there, the wider the piece of wood, the better to disperse the weight over the pan. Now we're going to start removing this cruise control, which is easy. Moving these bolts so we can get to the bolts in the power steering pump. Alright, now we will have to take the belt off because we need to be able to spin this pulley freely to get to the bolts, and the power steering pump's coming off. So we're going to go down here to the tensioner. You can use a specialty tool or a 3/8 ratchet wrench. If you don't have one with a long enough handle, you can use the cheater bar, because there's not a lot of hand space down there. Set my 3/8 there. There we go. Alright, now it's time to remove these two bolts and these two nuts. These are 18mm, these are 15mm. Now, of course, with the jack under it and supporting it, let's go ahead and take them out. Now would be a good time, if you needed to replace the engine mount here, to go ahead and do that so you don't have to go through some of these steps again. Now there's that out of the way. Now it's time to remove the three 13mm bolts holding the power steering pump in place. You just have to spin this pulley and find out where they are. Here's the first one. There's the second one. And there's the third one. Which is roughly right where that bolt was. See if we can bring it up a little bit more to make it easier. Now be careful not to jack it up too high, and make sure you have the wheels scotched so that the car doesn't roll on you, just in case. There we go. Alright, now those are freed. If we can just move the pump out of our way temporarily, and there it is. Now with the 8mm, just come in right here with a long extension. A magnetic one will probably work wonders here. Let me grab that bolt. Now for the sensor. Now you may have to take a screwdriver and pry at the base of it just a little bit, or you may get lucky and it'll wiggle out just a little bit. Just don't pull on the wires. In this case, I'm going to get a screwdriver now. Once you get it out, then go ahead and unplug the harness from the sensor. Now be sure to check your wiring here, because as you can see, I have issues. A lot of electrical tape. In fact, there's another layer of electrical tape over this I had to take off to see all this. I could see that a little bit, but whoever changed this head gasket originally probably saw that and just taped it up and left it. So luckily my parts store had a new plug-in, so now I'm going to change it over before I go any further. Alright, now that that's back out of the way, it's time to install the new camshaft sensor. Now what I'm going to do here is, here's the sensor. I'm going to go ahead and put the bolt there. Now that way I'm not trying to chase it down that opening. So just going to lower it in, line it up, right where that starts. Get it pushed in, holes lined up. There we go. Now just to tighten it down a little bit. Now you don't have to tighten this down too hard. It does have a little bit of metal, but it's mostly plastic. So just make sure it's good and snug. Now my new wiring harness is just a little bit long, but that'll be alright. And as you can see, I put more wire loom over it to protect it. And with it just being a little bit longer, I am able to tuck it under and back over there. That way it's kind of out of the way a little bit of the power steering pump, which now it's time to reinstall. Alright, now it's time to set the pump in place and attempt to line everything up, which can be a little tricky sometimes. To get all the bolts started, you're going to have to work on one at a time, because what we have to do is get one started just enough for the pulley to spin to get to the next hole, but not tight enough where we can't adjust the pump. There we go. Alright, to the next one. Spin that until you see the next hole for the bracket and the pump. Alright, now since all the bolts are started, go ahead and just tighten them all down. Alright, now I'm going to put the belt back on. Now, if you haven't replaced the belt in a while, this might be the best opportune time to replace the belt, since to replace the belt you have to take the mount out of the way, so you could kill two birds with one stone here if you wanted to. But just go ahead and slip the belt back on. Didn't take off anything major, so it's going to be pretty easy. Just slip back on case here to get the belt ready. And since it's jacked up a little bit more room to get down in there, making it just a little bit easier now. Alright. Everything looks to be where it should be. Alright, now I'm going to set the bracket over the studs and slowly lower the engine right pretty close where everything's going to line up, because jacking it up like that is changing the angle very slightly. So there's that. We're pretty close. Almost close enough to start it, but just not quite enough yet. And there it is. Just had to move the engine very, very slightly. Okay, now I'm going to jack it up just a little bit. There we go. Just make sure I'm lined up where I should be. Okay. Now, just gonna snug all these down. Got those snug. So those are snug and secure. Now, I'm going to tighten these down real good. Now you probably want to go to a bigger wrench or use a cheetah bar and just make sure that they're good. There we go. There we go. Just don't over tighten them. Because that is aluminum. Make sure these are tight. And there we go. Last but not least, we'll put this back where it belongs. Route this just a little bit differently this time than what it was earlier. There. Of course, last but not least, once that's tightened down, you can take the jack out from under it and you're done. Now, that's not too complicated. The center itself is extremely easy. removing the power steering pump, lift the engine. That's where the trick comes in. That's where it takes a little bit of time, but it's doable in your own driveway. You don't have to take this shop. You can do it yourself and save a lot of time and money. Now, I hope this video proved helpful to you. If you're not subscribed, go ahead and subscribe. Hit the like button. And as always, thanks for watching.